All right, so you may already be familiar with the absolute value function. If we put absolute value bars around a number, it just makes that number positive. So if it's already positive, like if we take the absolute value of 3, that's just 3, right? It just stays 3. But if we take the absolute value of -3, it just takes 3 and makes it positive. So or it takes -3 and makes it positive. Okay, so the absolute value function just takes a number and makes it positive. Now we can represent an absolute value function as a piecewise function, right? So if x is greater than 0, which means it's positive, it's just the same value. It's x, so f of x equals x. If x is less than 0, then we need to change the sign of it. So if we multiply a number by -1, it changes the sign of it. So here we're just taking negative x. If x is negative, we're taking the negative of it, which makes it positive. Okay, so that's how we can define the absolute value function as a piecewise function. So in example 3, we're asked to sketch the graph of the absolute value function. All right, so you can sort of think of it as the line y equals x, right? F of x equals x, right? And except that the negative part is flipped up to become positive. All right, so let's see. Let me draw an axis here. There's a vertical and horizontal axis. All right, x and f of x. And when x is greater than 0, so we're on the right-hand side of the vertical axis, then it's just the line y equals x, right? So that's just something that looks like that. So when x is 1, y is 1. When x is 3, y is 3, right? So we could put a scale on this. Here's 1, and then the corresponding value over here would be 1, right? Or if this is, let's see, 2, 3, 4, all right, then the corresponding value over here would be 4. Okay, so that's just the line y equals x. Now, for x less than 0, we're just going to take the value and make it positive. So when x is -1, we make it positive and it becomes 1, right? If it's a -4, then we're going to make it positive and it becomes a +4. So it's just going to look like kind of a mirror image over on the other side of the axis. Okay, and it just goes on and on, right? So let's see, draw a couple of points in there. So we have a point -1, 1, and we also have a point 1, 1. All right, so that's the graph of the absolute value function. So it also asks us for the domain and range. So let's look at what that is. All right, so remember the domain is the set of all possible x values, right? And so x can be really anything, right? So x can be -infinity to infinity. All real numbers. The range, right, it's always going to be positive, right? So f of x is the least it could be is 0, right? So and 0 is included, so I'll put a square bracket, but it can go as big as we want it to, right? So 0 to infinity. So positive numbers. All right. Well, there's another way we can think of the absolute value. We can think of absolute value as distance. And it's often used for distance because with distance, if we're just concerned with how far something is from something else, we really only want the positive values. So we can think of absolute value as being the distance from 0. So the number 3 is 3 units away from 0, right? So absolute value of 3, it's still 3. And 5 is 5 units away, or sorry, -5 is 5 units away from 0, right? So if we just want distance, it's the absolute value of 5. So -5 is 5 units away from 0. We can also measure distances from points other than 0. So if we take the difference between two values, it gives us a distance, but depending on whether we subtract the bigger from the smaller or the smaller from the bigger, we could end up with a negative number. So if we just want to know how far something is from a point, we can just take the difference between the 2 points. So for example, if we have x minus 4, right, then that's the distance from 4, the distance that x is from 4, right? So in this case, it looks like, this value right here looks like it's less than 4. If we took the difference, x minus 4, it's going to give us something negative, and we make it positive, and that gives us the distance that x is away from 4. So if we have two numbers, a and b, then the absolute value of a minus b is the distance between a and b on the number line. Okay, just distance, all right, not without the sign. All right, so it doesn't, when we express it as an absolute value, the distance is always going to be positive, and we don't have to worry about whether we're going to subtract the bigger from the smaller or the smaller from the bigger, and to make it positive, right? So with the absolute values will do that for us. So the absolute value of a minus b is the distance between a and b on the number line.